Welcome, ladies and gentlemen. I am your host, Ethan, and this is Roster United. And today we're going to be reviewing or going in depth with a villain from the starting box or the core box, per se, Ultron. And we're going to talk to him about him. But I saw here that Ultron is a little big, to talk about. He's got a few things in mind, and just I've had lots of cool experiences, but I thought maybe we could have somebody else, so a special guest in our podcast. And I thought about that, and today I brought along here my dad to come and talk to us about Ultron. Please introduce yourself.
Hey, Roster United fans. I am Rick, Ethan's father, and I'm here to help talk about Ultron today.
Yes, me and my father, we love board games, especially my father. He knows lots about board games, and specifically, he knows a lot about Marvel United. So he'll be helping us go in depth with Ultron here. So let's begin with Ultron's dashboard, his villain dashboard. Dad, could you please read us his BAM effect?
Yes, it says here that Ultron's BAM effect is add 3 of the thugs to any location where Ultron is at. And of course, that feeds into also doing 1 damage for every hero that's in Ultron's location. The reason that that's so powerful, we know, is really Ultron's Villainous Plot. Basically, when all of the locations are full of thugs or bystanders, Ultron wins. So even if he's in a spot where we have 3 thugs that we got to add and that spot's already full, those are just going to flow around and keep going until he fills all the spots up.
Yeah, and and his BAMs, he can activate his BAM effect 5 times.
Right, he's got 5 cards that have BAM on them. It's interesting that even one of his BAM locations, he does not move at all. But again, it doesn't really matter. Only the damage he would do to heroes. But the fact is, he's trying to fill those spots, and he's going to drop 3 thugs every time he goes on a BAM. So that's 5 of his basically 9 cards in his deck.
Yes.
Or excuse me, of his 12 cards.
Yes, 12 cards. And now you might be wondering, what happens if you put 3 thugs on a location, but you can't fit 2, 3, or 1 of them? What happens if you can't fill up any more spaces? Well, he'll activate his overflow, and this is what his overflow says. If a thug, usually a thug with his BAM power, or a civilian, can't be added to a location, add that token or add that thug or civilian to the next location clockwise instead. So, Dad, we see here clearly this overflow power really helps Ultron with his Villainous Plot, doesn't it?
Yeah, it goes basically, he's just filling spots. And as you notice, really all, like most villains do, of course, all of his cards, his threats, and any of his threats, which have the different kind of basically areas that you've got to clear, but they also come with the Ultron clones. All of it's just feeding into trying to pour on thugs and fill those spots up as fast as he can before the heroes can stop him.
Exactly. And speaking about those threats, why don't we take a look at them, shall we? Let's see. Ultron has, out of 6 threats, 2 of them have this power or this threat called duplication. And Dad, what does duplication do? When Ultron's in that location, he activates it. What does he do?
Well, they're trying to make it thematic. And if anybody's ever, read Ultron in the comic book, or of course most of us have seen the Avengers movies where Ultron is at, duplication, Ultron can clone himself a lot. Mm-hmm. So the duplication, I think, is trying to feed on that. It drops a thug right there. Mm-hmm. So if Ultron's BAMing and he's or if he's cutting off one of his cards that triggers the effect, that has the bullseye effect, he's going to drop another thug right where he's at.
Yes, and that's very interesting, right? I mean, this is just 2 out of 6 cards, and we already see a lot of it has to do with adding thugs. And the overflow also applies to the threat. So if you add a threat card, if he adds a threat card in his location, and and you can't fit it. It'll also cause the overflow. Very interesting.
Yeah, I thought that was interesting because it's one of those, and I apologize for not knowing the word, but it's one of those that has the target effect. So most of Ultron's cards, different from other heroes, he only has 3 of his actual cards from his master plan that drop characters where he's at and then in the adjacent spots. But they also trigger those duplication effects. So it's possible for him to drop a couple of his cards. He could drop 4 total folks, either 3 bystanders and 1 thug, or up to 4 thugs in 1 spot. And as we know, most locations, that's going to fill it out.
Yes.
So he is just going to be pouring guys out with that threat.
And and it's very, and just a quick little note here, the guys that he puts out, most of them are thugs. There's at least 2 cards where he puts out civilians, but personally, I've had experience with this. You probably had experiences with this, that you kind of go for the threats and thugs in this game to clear the missions out, because getting civilians is very difficult. Now it depends how you draw the cards, what he does, but
yeah, you've got a less than 10% chance that he's actually dropping that full bystander card. And what I say by that is in his master plan, he has a card where he drops 3 bystanders where he's at, and then 1 bystander in each adjacent spot. That's 1 out of 12, so that's less than 10%. So most of the time, what you're dealing with is his thugs. And if we go into more of his threat cards, 2 of his other threat cards are actual Ultron clones. So these are minions that are, obviously copies of Ultron that go off when he bams. And when he bams again, they're just copies of Ultron. They're just weaker. So instead of dropping 3 thugs like Ultron himself does and then doing 1 damage, they drop 1 thug and do 1 damage.
Yes.
And but that gives the ability, in this case, the heroes can decide to stop from dropping that thug from the minion, from the Ultron clone minion, if they decide to take a damage themselves.
Yes. Very wise spoken. I even like that you even put the little percentage detail on there. I've never done the percentage. How about that? Well, let's go to our next threat that Ultron has. He doesn't just have duplication. He also has Ultron virus. Of course, he's a computer, so he's going to put out some viruses out there. Why wouldn't he? Now, it says here, when heroes start their turn in this location, the location where this threat is at, they must ignore 1 action symbol in their choice. Excuse me. Basically, that means that when you play a card, for example, a move and a hit, if you start your turn there, you have to choose whether you want to either play a hit or play a move, because you have to cancel one or another. Any opinions about that? How does that, kind of help Ultron clearing? Yeah, I know clearing, but how does that also help him, not let the heroes clear spaces up?
Well, it's interesting because it's if you start your turn there. So you're basically, on your turn, you're trying to, Ultron's gone maybe right before you or a couple before you. So you're going to try and get to a location where you can clear out thugs. And again, if he's robbed you of one of those symbols, then it's usually he's robbing you of maybe an opportunity to move, or an opportunity, maybe you can move and hit. Now you're stuck just hitting, and maybe that's a location when there's nothing, or you can't get to where you need to be, or you can't be as effective once you get there. So it plays, again, I think, into the Ultron theme of being able to move around and clean up, because you're just about cleanup.
Yes. And I like that interesting point there about the taking turns, right? Because when you start your turn, it's different from ending your turn there, right? You can end your turn at that location, and then your friends, whoever's playing goes up next. Then it's your turn. So you still have so much time to clear that threat before, or you have so much time to still stay in that location while your friends are clearing that threat out. So you still have time before worrying about that. But hey, if you can't do anything, you're kind of stuck and you have to cancel one of your actions. So it kind of limits what you can do. Very interesting, ain't it?
Yeah, that's extremely interesting.
Very interesting.
I think obviously with his master plan, he's got a few more cards I don't think that we've talked about, Ethan. First off is his mesmerize. And in this case, Ultron does not move. But it gives one crisis token to each hero in Ultron's location and adjacent locations. And then you place a thug in any location without heroes. So if the heroes are bunching up trying to clean house, he's going to spread out even quicker. Any thoughts on that one?
Well, personally for me, give one crisis token to each hero in Ultra's location. Oh, excuse me. Did you do the mesmerize?
It plays into his encephalo ray.
Yes.
I guess I should have mentioned that because encephalo ray plays off of that. So it says deal 1 damage to each hero for each crisis token they have.
Yeah.
Then a hero of your choice takes a crisis token. So again, it gives Ultron opportunity to hit. Those two kind of feed off each other. And really the ability for that to be very powerful is probably going to depend on how those cards come out.
Exactly. And, from talking from a villain's standpoint, that is a great combination Ultron wants, right? He wants to put out these two memorizes. And no, it's not just giving the crisis token, which is very bad for the heroes because he'll play the
encephalo
ray, yes. But also in the mesmerize, he'll place one thug in each location without heroes. So just a little other thing, but yes, it is very bad giving a crisis token. It stinks, honestly, because you're just there, you're playing, and then all of a sudden he plays this card. He doesn't move, and then you have to take a crisis token, and that will affect you very much if he plays the how do you say that?
Encephalo,
oh my goodness,
I guess.
Encephalo.
I think it's kind of interesting too because it makes the gameplay different depending on how many players you have.
Yes.
So obviously, if you only have a 2-player game, well, Ultron's chance of giving you a crisis token is pretty low because it's got to be where he is and anywhere adjacent to him. So that's half the board. But then he places a thug any location without heroes. Well, if you just have 2 heroes, he's placing 4 thugs, maybe more, depending if you're both together. Now, if you're playing a 4-player game, he can't place as many thugs, but he's probably giving out more crisis tokens. So it's kind of interesting how that dynamic makes the gameplay different depending on how many players and characters you have.
Yes, and just thinking about this a little bit more, it's kind of a great strategy Ultron has, where he can kind of deal damage, give out crisis tokens to deal damage. But again, how it says, deal 1 crisis token to each hero in Ultron's location or adjacent. And, I think, like you said, on a 4-player game, that would be a little bit better. Or no, that would be worse for the heroes.
On crisis tokens.
But
on thugs, it's probably not as bad.
Exactly. On thugs, it's fine. And, I've done this before. When you play against Ultron, you kind of want to have your distance against Ultron so he doesn't give you those crisis tokens. But you might be wondering, well, you still have to clear those, thugs and civilians out. Well, yes, you have to still clear those. Yes.
Yeah, and the thing is with those that probably we should mention is on those mesmerize where they're giving out the crisis tokens and dropping the thugs, and then on the encephalo ray where he does the damage based on how many crisis tokens, those are 0 moves. So if those do come out and you've tried to keep your distance, he's not going to be able to get you with those.
That's true.
Because he does not move or rotate around the board with that. Another thing, Ethan, and I don't know if it's appropriate to mention now, but the other thing probably taking into account on how hard Ultron get is depending on what locations you have. Because Ultron's all about filling the locations with thugs and civilians or bystanders. Some of the locations only allow for 3 spots. 2 of them, the Avengers Tower and the Avengers Mansion. And then you have Times Square and Central Park, which will allow for 5 villains. Now, they also start with more at the beginning of the game. But, it's kind of an interesting balance. If you're starting with some of these smaller locations, and, Ultron can fill those out a lot quicker.
Yes.
So very, very kind of interesting concept there, too.
Yeah, and, talking about these locations, like you said, not just the spaces, but also what the locations can help the heroes and can really hurt Ultron. For example, here the New York Police Headquarters. Now, of course, it depends what threat there is here, but if the heroes clear it, they can discard one thug from any location. Now, that doesn't mean put it on the mission. That means put it back in the pool. Put it back in the discarded area.
Yeah, you don't actually get it towards your mission to attack him, but that's great if you're in a problem mode.
Yes, exactly. Perfect for problem mode. Honestly, if you know very well New York Police and you don't need to, kind of look at it before you play the game or something like that. If you already know what the power is at the end of your turn, play that against Ultron. Please do that. It'll help you so much. And there's not just that one. There's also Times Square, and like you said, Dad, lots of spaces, but also a really good end of turn power, which says you may rescue one civilian from this location. Now, I know where the questions go, though. Ultron, and I just know why I messed up so badly.
You didn't mess up. I think what we're seeing is the only reason that's not as strong is Ultron just doesn't put civilians out.
True.
He just doesn't drop civilians, and that's part of the problem in beating Ultron. Because again, the 3 missions, you got to get 2 of the missions before you can attack him. The Thug mission, it's guaranteed.
Yes,
it's going to happen. The problem with it is you're beating thugs so fast that now you've beat that first mission. Now Ultron's coming out with his master plan card every 2 hero cards. Exactly. As we all know in the game, the way the game plays is as you're dropping cards, the heroes get to play 3 cards, and then a master plan card comes out, and then 3 more than a master plan until you win one of the missions. Whether that is get 9 thugs cleared, 9 bystander civilians cleared, or 4 of the threats cleared off the board. Then he's going after every 2 hero cards. And now we're talking big time problems. Yes. But the problem with Ultron is you're basically, to win, you almost can only get thugs and clear threats. Because he doesn't drop enough bystanders for you really to fill that bystander mission up, I don't think.
Yeah, exactly. And speaking about clearing the threats and thugs, that means on hero selection. I mean, of course, the fun thing is just to pick any heroes, and just have fun, or pick your favorite heroes. It don't matter. But if you want to go a little bit more strategic and actually search for the perfect hero to play, like I do, like a lot of people that I know do, well, you definitely want a hitter. You want a person that has lots of hit icons, lots of, just hitting. But also, in this channel, in this podcast, we haven't talked a lot about villains and their threats being different symbols. For example, instead of heroics that are substituted by hits, moves, or whatever it is, here Ultron is just heroics. All of them is heroics except for 2, which is this Ultron clone, which is deal 4 damage to eliminate those threats.
Like a minion. Anytime a minion's on the board, you've got to hit them like you would the main bad guy. And I think really even here, initially when we were talking about it, I was thinking a lot about how you want to move around the board, but it almost doesn't matter because as Ultron fills spots, his overflow is just fill the other cards. Yeah. So really the damage, the pain's coming to you. It don't matter where you're at. There's probably minions on the board for you to clean out.
Oh, yeah. And,
or excuse me, I mean thugs on the board to clear out. Yeah.
And you know what? Yeah, you're right. I mean, even if you're going to be close to defeating Ultron, even if you're just 1 card away from beating him or whatever, if he plays another Master Plan card, he's still going to put lots of minions out there. I don't care if you cleaned up every single Master Plan card he's going to have. He's going to place more guys whether you like it or not. So you're in constant cleanup mode. Basically.
Yeah, I mean, 88 of his 12 cards, 66% of his cards are dropping at least 3 minions.
I love that
on
percentage.
The map. At least 3 minions on the map. So if you're talking heroes and you're trying to best fit heroes, you're looking at Hulk. I mean, Hulk's almost a guaranteed. I mean, he's got cards where he's cleaning the board. I mean, fantastic. Now, he's not putting those on mission cards, if I remember that power right. It's just clearing them off the card, but it keeps the game alive.
Yes, he has the power. If I'm correct, it's called Hulk Smash. And it says deal 1 damage to everything. Now, No, everything also means the hero in that location. When it says everything, it means even the hero that is with Hulk. But anyway, it says deal damage to everything, which is great. But what happens if there's civilians there? Very rare. But what if there is? Well, Hulk will discard all the civilians, not the thugs, just the civilians there. Which is, I guess, fine, especially if you're going to, if you're going to have a situation where you're almost going to have an overflow. Having that Hulk power right there is amazing and very helpful. I've had great experiences with Hulk. I've had a few buddies of mine play as Hulk, and I really liked how they played Hulk. I really liked how I played Hulk, and Hulk's almost undefeated in this game just because he's just, again, a big hitter. His powers is phenomenal, and yeah. Do you have any other hero you'd suggest?
Yeah, I think another hero, honestly, and I'm not just sure exactly how well he pairs with Ant-Man, but Hulk, because I think Ant-Man's powerful. Because, again, you're not probably clearing enough bystanders, civilians. If it's civilians, the blue one, I apologize. You're not clearing enough of those to get it, so you need to clear the threats off.
Yeah.
And Hulk is good about clearing a couple threats off with those Ultron clone minions, but Ant-Man has tons of heroics.
Yes.
So Ant-Man can clear off the duplication threat. He can clear off the Ultron virus threat. He is quick to do that. So yes. I think heroes that are heavy on heroics are a good complement to like a Hulk.
Yes.
Because of that. Probably, Iron Man's not too bad with some heroics as well. But if you want just pure heroics, it seems like to me Ant-Man's really a good choice here as well.
Yes, and one of and almost in the beginning of the podcast, I've talked about Ant-Man. And probably those who have heard me know that I want to be really flexible with the characters, but it's okay if they have lots of heroics. For example, Ant-Man, great heroic player, but I always give this example of him all the time, and it's not really a good one. He can do lots of heroics, but the problem is that's it. He can't really move. He can't really hit. But he could do tons of heroics. Don't get me wrong. That is phenomenal. You want that. And I just think Ant-Man is a perfect combination with Hulk if there's a third player joining. If there's a good mover.
And that's true. And the only reason I was thinking with Ant-Man is just, again, if you can get him to where the threats are, he'll fill them out.
Yes.
Hulk is like almost all damage. Yeah. So you almost he's got no heroics. And you've got Ant-Man who's just all heroics.
All heroics.
And no damage. So in this case, you got Hulk kind of cleaning up. Yeah. But you got Ant-Man bringing it in he's basically, to me, paving the road for Hulk in this case.
Yes.
In this case.
Yes.
Because, again, as somebody who moves a lot, I don't know if there's much benefit here.
True. There's not really that much benefit.
You always want somebody to move. You got to get around to the threats. You got to get to the hero. But my point only is the pain's coming to you because Ultron's going to overflow before you know it. And almost any location you're at is going to have guys. But that's just one way to look at it.
Yeah, talking about those moves, I think it's important, especially for Ultron here, because, again, you might clear up half of the board, but the other side of the board, there's tons of villains and tons of, thugs and civilians and all those things. Well, more thugs than anything. So you have to move there. I have played with Ant-Man. I was Ant-Man and somebody else with Hulk, and we played against Ultron. And boy, we barely won on a landslide, though, as they said, because the only thing was because we had enough moves, not less, not more, literally enough, but we were almost out of it, really. I mean, Ant-Man doesn't have that much heroics, nor does Hulk. So just doing those extra things, it's tough. Not heroics, wild. And yeah, Ant-Man can't move, Hulk can't move. And just the problem with that is that, sometimes you have to waste Hulk's power, just to get by, or whatever. Because, sometimes you just get stuck and you can't move. And Ultron can take great advantage of that.
Yeah, and I was trying to give just some different insight.
yes,
I mean,
of course,
I
of
think
course.
the ultimate, probably the best guy to match with any of them is Captain America. I mean, Captain America can move. He's got heroics, but then he can give tokens to Hulk.
Yes.
And Hulk could be moving. I'm looking at it from a two-player perspective, but if you're looking, probably like a Captain America, maybe balanced with like a Captain Marvel, and then Hulk. Because Captain Marvel can kind of move and hit. Hulk's a big smasher, and Cap can just fill in any cracks you got. So that's probably the ultimate three-man team out of the base box.
Yes. And you know what? Just one more thing before we wrap up here. I really like Ultron, and just the experience that I've had with him against Ant-Man and Hulk is again, it's still, you're still able to win. You're still able to win with those two. You're able to get enough heroics, definitely enough hits. It's just a great thing. But it was probably because how Ultron was played. He didn't play a lot of guys out there. We didn't have lots of BAM cards in the beginning, so we were fine. But I bet if we played again, it would be super different, and we would probably lose almost. But yeah, I think what you said there about Captain America, Captain Marvel, and Hulk, I think that's really good. So yeah. So I personally enjoyed Ultron. I think he's a great villain. I like his threats, his cards, and his gameplay. It's always fun. If you don't want Red Skull or Taskmaster, you can do Ultron, especially in the core box. Final opinions. What do you say about this character?
Yeah, I think Ultron's fun. I think, again, as with any of these heroes in this game, a lot of it depends on what cards come out from the master plan and when. I think it's fun just because he's kind of a simple character. Really, his job is just filling up.
Yeah,
it's really easy to remember. If he overflows, you just drop his token somewhere. You don't have to remember all these little steps. So I think for newer players, it can be hard, but it's easy rules to manage, in my opinion.
100%.
And I think you're just smashing. And again, I think you're filling with heroics. So I think he's a great character, a great villain to play against. Great addition to the core box.
Yes, he's a great, just almost a one-of-a-kind hero that I have played against. Well, ladies and gentlemen, this was a going in depth with Ultron. Thank you very much for listening, and thank you, Dad, for being here with us, with me, talking about this character. And you know what? Maybe you'll come back next time in the next episode. That would be fun.
Yeah, well, I look forward to it.
Of course. Well, ladies and gentlemen, thank you for listening. Have a good day. Also, please, thank you, for listening to this episode, and keep supporting. The only thing you have to do to support the podcast is just to listen to the episodes or to get more people liking it, whatever the case may be. Anyway, thank you very much. Have a good day. See you later.
See ya.
Bye.